everyone. Welcome to our latest episode of Rebecca and Rebecca. My name is Rebecca Yager, and I live in Dallas, Texas, and my partner over there is Rebecca Reed on the farms of Indiana. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing well, thank you. How you doing, Rebecca?
Good. We were just we were just talking about you cutting hay, and I was
Hmm.
complaining about our late summer here in Dallas. So we're doing our urban rural stuff today.
Yeah,
And stuff. Anyway, today we are doing a book review of Secrets in the Mist by Morgan Busse. And this was an intriguing choice for us. So let's get into this. Do you want to read the blurb about it? And so
I
folks
would
know what book we're talking about.
I would love to. All right, so it starts out, what's lurking in the mist is the least of their worries. In a world where humanity lives in the sky to escape deadly mist below, Cass's only goal is survival. That is, until she finds a job on the airship Daedalus as a diver. Now she explores ruined cities, looking for treasure and people's lost heirlooms, until a young man hires her to find the impossible, a way to eradicate the mist. Theodore Winchester is a member of one of the 5 families that rule the skies. Following in his father's footsteps, he searches for the source of the mist and hopes to stop the purges used to control overpopulation. But what he finds are horrifying secrets and lethal ambition. If he continues his quest, it could mean his own death. The mist is rising, and soon the world will be enveloped in its deadly embrace, turning what's left of humanity into the undead. Dun, dun, dun.
Ooh. Hey, this is appropriate as we're leading into Halloween, I guess. So,
No, it's true.
on the,
Never really
all right.
thought about it that way, but yeah.
That just occurred to me. You and I were talking earlier about the genre of this book. We might as well start there because it is a quite a mixture of things. First, it is categorized as young adult, although you and I are both well into adulthood, and I think we both enjoyed reading it. It's got a steampunk vibe, dystopian fantasy.
Mm, it has, I guess, it does a little bit of fantasy. There's not any real magic going on or anything
Mhm.
like that, but the mist has its own kind of properties that change and act a little bit like magic, even though it's not magic, but
Mhm.
more like out of control science, I would
Ooh,
say.
ooh,
So
yeah.
maybe sci-fi is the actual moniker that it needs rather than fantasy. It's fantasy in that the world is made up, and that it's not, well, it's a modified world, I guess you should say, because the as it mentioned in the blurb, the humanity is no longer able to live on the lower regions of the planet because of this mist that keeps rising, and now they're forced to live on the peaks of the tallest mountains, or else they're building these things called skies. What do they call those? Sky cities. They're floating like
The
cloud
floating
islands. That's what it
island.
was, I think. And that's where the really, really rich people live. And so the higher up you go, which is a really interesting metaphor, because the higher you live, the more money you have and the more power you have. And so those on the lower slopes are being enveloped closer. The mist is growing closer and closer to them. And those are the ones who are forced out by the families with power up above. And it's and then they turn into these zombie like undead creatures that are called turned. And it's these spores in the mist that they they get into the human body, and the body acts as a host, and they start to it's not hatch, what is that called? They germinate or something. I don't know what the actual terminology is, but whatever happens, and it takes over, and the
Right,
person is no longer a person.
right.
It's this animated undead body thing with these
body thing.
cords making it function. So very science fiction-y.
Very, very speculative science fiction-y. Yeah, that was good. That was one we hadn't mentioned earlier. So
True.
I like that. The mist is creepy the way she
Mm,
describes it, and it's rising, and the threat of it is growing, although they've been living this way for a couple of centuries.
yes.
Apparently, but there's now a sense of urgency with it. Um, and she does make a great distinction with the low and the high, poor, rich, you know, whatever. I mean, there's so many good metaphors, and the symbolism there is
And yet the whole idea of, the fact that there are no slaves, like everybody's not, they're all still like supposedly controlling themselves, but really we see that that's not entirely true. With the society, it's it's definitely class based, very
mm-hmm,
class based.
mm-hmm. Definitely the class system there. But what is also universal in the story, regardless of the genre, and like you and I've talked about, this way out of my genre. I do not read sci-fi. I do not read young adult fantasy. Thoroughly enjoyed the book, so let's get that up front. Really got into it. But I thought one of the reasons I really enjoyed it was the way Morgan built her characters. And characters are universal. And what the lead character Cassiopeia, she hates her first name, is struggling with. She's orphaned, she's poor, she's living on the street, she's struggling to survive and stuff. And you're rooting for her from the
Yeah,
moment you meet her.
right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I really like how she brought us into Cass's world right at the moment of like when she was set on her own. There was a purge, and she's on her own immediately. And I feel like we see the agency in this girl is not a quitter. She is a fighter, and she knows how hard it's going to be to survive, but she's also very determined. And you see her, in that very first scene, taking deliberate steps to give herself a chance to survive and the ability to survive. And I just love how Morgan did that. I thought she did a great job. You can see her determination. You can see her, her competency too, that you think she has a chance to do what she set out to do.
So immediately we're cheering for the heroine. I mean, we're on board with Cass. A little while later, we meet Theodore, and he's on one of the echelon families, one of the rich things, but he's starting to realize there's hinky stuff going on behind the scenes. So he's not your typical rich kid, so to
No.
speak, and he's really trying to do what's right and figure out what's wrong. With the mist and with other things, can't give all this away, but he's trying to fix things, and he thinks people in his world are doing it wrong, and he's definitely going against the grain, and he's bucking the system up there big time, and you don't do that with the rich folks.
But yet he's not like he's not against his own class so much as he is that he feels like they're just complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you feel like that? It's not that he really wants to like, it's not a conquer the world kind of thing. It's not a take down those in power so
Oh,
much
no,
as it is
no.
it's an idea of why aren't we doing more? Because we have power. We have power, so why are we not, trying to find a cure? Why are we letting all these people become turned, because there's too many people, we can't feed them, we can't house them, whatever. He wants a solution,
Mm-hmm.
and others just want status quo, and
Yeah,
he doesn't like status quo. So
yeah.
it's a little different too. It's not like some of the sci-fi fantasy where you've got one group working from within to destroy the system. That's not at all what Theo's about.
No, Theo really wants to help people, and he really wants to. He's measuring the mist. The mist is rising. It is growing more ominous and more threatening, and he realizes this, but no one else is paying attention. So he's like sounding the alarm or trying to, and getting shut down. And so he's trying to find a way to help. Is that
Mm-hmm.
fair?
Yes, I agree. He's definitely wanting to help. And that's the difference, I guess, is because he sees the lower class as people, whereas I think, it's that typical like upper echelon, they don't consider the people they're below them as equal or as important. And Theo does. And
Mhm.
Theo's father did as well, and that's where he gets it from.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's definitely a helper. He'd be a 2, Enneagram 2.
Very good. And it's interesting though, now let's, be fair with this, that Theo, lives in a world where they look down on like the people in Cass's world. But Cass also has her own prejudices against the echelon people too. So it's a really interesting way how they learn to see each other as people throughout the
Yeah,
story and not just their status
right.
or where they are in the world.
Yeah, I thought that Morgan did a really good job of that, actually, showing um it from both sides. and
Mhm,
and uh, it's really it's really refreshing to see that. I've only seen that done super well in a couple of books, and this is definitely one of them where, and she's not like, mm, the word echelon, I think, is a slang word too that's not necessarily considered a good word. For That's what the people call them, the street people call the upper class that,
mhm,
and they don't call themselves that, but um she also sees people for who they are, just
mhm,
like Theo does, and they have that in common. And so when they don't meet in person for quite a while.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
it's but they're both working in a way for the same thing without even knowing it.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Um, as we mentioned before, Cass is orphaned. Her parents have been turned. They were purged and sent into the mist and were turned. So she's been on her own and she runs across the ship and a very kindly captain and the crew, and she finds a new family. And this sets her on a whole new course, whole new adventure where she can be a diver because of her size. She's small into the mist, and you have to have masks and everything, all the protection. It reminded me of scuba diving, but you're diving into air, you know,
right.
where they can retrieve things from the deserted cities that have been overtaken by the mist. But I love the way the people on the ship, her crew mates, become her family. Guided by a very nice captain father figure who's taking in the strays. You know,
Yes.
of the way.
And in a way, the ship is kind of a utopia in a way, because you've
Mhm,
got the captain who has money, at least some. He's
mhm,
has status. He had some wealth. He had to, or the family had to, because they wouldn't have been able to own this ship otherwise.
mhm,
And they operate, in this system where it's all about your work ethic and your ability to fit into this group and do your job.
mhm,
It has nothing to do with where you came from, or how, what you had before. It doesn't matter. Once you get on the ship, everybody's on an equal footing, and
mhm,
they all pull together. And you're exactly right. It's just a found family that they all fit into. And it's kind of refreshing in another way with what Morgan did, because a lot of times you'll find this in other books, but there's always somebody who doesn't really fit.
mm,
And there isn't really anybody that is like that in this crew. I mean, they all pretty much work
mhm,
together. They're not exact, they don't always agree and have the exact same goals, but they
mhm,
all do work as one unit.
mhm.
And they don't have anybody that's trying to undermine them from the inside, really. So I like that.
Yeah, and it's good. Utopia might be a good word for them. They found their own little Shangri-La, the world where they are people and they are noticed, and they have a job and they have worth and they have
Hmm.
value with this ship. So it's yeah, like that. So again, when we're talking about, reading out of my own genre anyway, my comfort level with genre, the universal truths here are through these characters and through how she's established the story and the story world, even though it's we don't have mist out there, but but there are universal truths through all of this that I think anybody could get into, whether this is a genre that you normally read or not.
Yes.
So
And the
yeah, so I
writing,
ended up loving the book. Yeah, go ahead.
the writing is very, it flows really nicely
Mhm.
too. It's, she has a nice way of putting sentences together and words. And I thought she, just to listen to it too, because when I listen to it on audio, I hear all of those times where they, really um, get in, have lots of dialogue tags, and she doesn't do that. It flows really nicely in audio. Um, and I enjoyed the narrator as well. The narrator was quite good, except for there was one word that she kept saying. Oh, eke, like eke out a living. She
Oh
said ek every time, and I'm like, that's
no.
not the word. And I wanted to, but that was the only complaint I had was that one word, and she used it 2 or 3 times, but I'm like, it's not ek. But anyway, that's my only complaint.
Okay, I will. We're always going to be straightforward here without giving it away. I did love the story, and by the way, this is a two book series,
Yeah.
so to speak. And I immediately went and bought the next book because I had to find out what happened. And the reason I had to find out what happened is she really left it on a cliffhanger. And I really hated that. And had the second book not been out and available for me to go get immediately, I'm not sure how happy I would have been as a reader. That is my personal preference. She did her job because I did go buy the next book and loved the second book and everything like that. But I do caution anybody who's going to read it, it's a cliffhanger ending.
Hmm.
So be prepared for book two.
I mean, but neither book is super long. These are actually fairly short. So, I mean, as a duology, it's really like one super long fantasy, like adventure novel, quest novel, if you want to think of it that way. So, if you just get both of them
Yeah.
and just read the whole thing, you're good.
Absolutely. The second one is called Blood Secrets, by the way. So we should mention that. This is Secrets in the Mist is book one, and Blood Secrets is book two. And Blood Secrets, we really get more into Theo's world.
Hmm.
Um, there, we started out in Cass's world and Secrets in the Mist, and then as we go along, we get into Theo's world and then how they learn to work together um, to solve the issues of this
Right.
world. So yeah, just plan on getting them both, and they are fairly quick reads. And I kind of complain about the cliffhanger, but there wasn't really a great place to stop it. I mean, the story, it's
No, I don't know where else she would have,
yeah.
to split it into a duology, and it would have been a long
Hmm.
single book, especially for in the YA, genre, or in that YA, in that section, like, because I don't know how long each one was, but I probably 60, maybe 60,000 words or somewhere in there, I'm guessing, and so you'd have been talking, a Brandon Sanderson size volume, and that's a little big for YA. So
It would
I
have
think
been.
she, splitting it was probably, I'm sure it was the right thing to do. It's just the idea that you're right. You want them both at hand
Yeah.
because you're gonna want to just keep going.
So just plan on that, because I do think they are totally worth reading. Again, I think I may read more from Morgan. I'm intrigued now with
You,
this overall genre. I'm not sure it'd be a regular read of mine, truthfully, but thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really cool to step out of my comfort zone with reading, which I think we all need to do on occasion. Really get away from our normal genre and read and explore what other people are doing. And again, as writers, what Morgan is doing with the characters here, again, is
mhm.
universal for any genre you write. I mean, just so well
Yeah.
done.
I would definitely study that first chapter as a author just to how do you get your readers on board with the character, and how do you show your characters inherent traits and personality, and give them that, set them up, just for the next part of the book, because she did a fantastic job of
Mhm.
that in chapter one.
Yeah, yeah.
Really
I
good
mean,
job.
we're living every moment with Cass. We really are there. So
And the
thoroughly,
world too. You
yeah.
know, like you get right into the world and you understand it. It's very incremental how she takes you into this world and shows you what is actually going on. And but it's done super well.
Hmm. It's bite-sized pieces, and it's the way it should be kind of trailed out for you. You know, you're
Hmm.
going to keep following. You want to keep seeing what is next with the world. So that, from the writer perspective, is where very well done. From the reader perspective, you just want to keep going with the book. So I actually really loved it. Really glad to have stepped out of my comfort zone. So thank you, Rebecca, for that suggestion. I think it's good. It's highly recommended by me. This book, in fact, both of them. So I would do
Yeah.
Secrets in the Mist and Blood Secrets.
Yeah.
Any other
I
thoughts?
I've read her some of her other things, and this is a lot different though than some of her other YA fantasy that she has out there. So just if you have read some of her other works, a lot of them were more actually like taken from history. She takes a lot of things that were actual history
Mm-hmm.
and twists them up slightly, and then spins them into like a little fantasy. There was like Fox is taken out of a true incident that happened in England when they were trying to get rid of the King James, I believe it was. I forget. It's been a while since I read it,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes that whole situation and it spins it into a fantasy that is fantastic. And the magic system is amazing for those of you who like fantasy. It's so imaginative. And then she has another one about the Russian czars. It's about one of the daughters of the Russian czar, and it's also based a lot on. There's a lot of real, true history in there, but with a fantasy spin on it. So if you like history, those you'll like those. And she has a lot of other stuff too, but they're so different from this. This is, that steampunk, gaslight era, um, more technology. It's not medieval. It's not, it's just a different, it's different from some of the other stuff that she's written, or even from like the Raven series. The Cry of the Raven series is completely different from what this is, but it's really good. It's really done. Well done.
Really, really well done. We are going to speak with Morgan next month right here so we can ask her about the shift in this, what gave her the ideas for this duology, and again, talk about those differences between her previous books. And I'm excited to see what she might have coming up next. So I think it's going to be a great conversation next time around with her.
I agree.
So that's great. Well, I think it's good. I think we both highly recommend this duology. Read them both. Just you're going to
Yep.
have to read them both.
Right. Yeah. Just plan on it. If you don't, you'll be disappointed. So.
Yeah. Worth the read, worth the time, even if it's not your normal type of book you read. It was really a fun read, and glad we did it. This was great, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Morgan next month.
As am I.
Okay, great. Well, so we got next time again. We'll have Morgan here next month, right here on Rebecca and Rebecca. Y'all take care, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.